Welcome to BW Hotfires. We have with us Mr. Saurabh Kumar from EESL, who is which is a critical element of the government's e-mobility program. So thank you so much, Mr. Kumar, for sparing your time and talking to BW Business World.
Thank you very much. Pleasure. It's all mine.
So let me begin with current development which has gripped the whole economy. So what kind of learnings have you derived from COVID? Is there any sort of afterthought that life will move and how things will shape up going ahead with this pandemic? Your thoughts and how EESL as a company has reinvented itself post that outbreak?
First of all, let me thank you for inviting me on the channel. Yes, as you rightly said, the world seems to have changed forever insofar as what we do, how we deal with things, how we deal with each other. The pandemic has shown that there's a world which is BC and maybe before Corona and after Corona. One or two things that have come out of it, and I'm sure this is the learning not just for EESL but for virtually everyone else, is that the more we do things virtually, the better we are. The more we avoid travels, the more we are able to engage in a manner which is human contactless. That is something which seems to be the need of the hour, and we very quickly adopted to it, honestly speaking. Before the lockdown happened, we were virtually running on physical files for our internal processes. The first thing that we did in the lockdown is that immediately everything became online, and I'm very glad to report that for the last 3 months I have not seen a file coming to me physically. So that change we have made very quickly. It helped because it's a smaller organization, no longer a small organization. We're about 1,000 people now, but more importantly, younger organization which adopts to technology very quickly. Number two, what we also see is that one of our verticals, which is the smart meter vertical, actually became very, very critical in these lockdown times, because places in UP, also in Delhi, Haryana, there was no need for a meter reader to go to anybody's house and generate a bill. It was all happening seamlessly. So I think this gave us the right direction, and we also see the key stakeholders now talking about smart meters in a much bigger way than ever before, because that's one thing which will continue to be important regardless of how whether we find a vaccine or we don't. It's an efficient way. It's a contactless way of generating and dealing with consumers.
Sir, how has COVID-19 impacted EESL's business operations? Have you seen an increase in numbers or decrease?
No, I'll say both. If you ask me about financial year 19-20, I think the last quarter was a disaster for us in terms of revenues, in terms of collections, everything, because practically speaking, from January onwards, things started to go slow, and so yes, our numbers have been impacted. We are going to the board later next week with our annual accounts, but I can share with you that we will remain at the same level as we were last year. So that has, although it compares well with the other companies who have actually shown a negative growth in the year 19-20, but we have held on to what we had last year. Coming to the next year, which is the current year, I think there's enormous interest in smart meters. There's a lot more interest in electric mobility, and there is a lot more interest in decentralized solar plants. So we already see increase in our business in these three critical sectors. So it's a yes or no, as I said, but practically speaking, in the current situation, yes, we have been able to overcome whatever losses we had or setbacks we had during the lockdown.
Sir, now what kind of disruptions has COVID-19 brought to the power sector?
Well, I'm really not the expert for power sector, but yes, the demand has been down. The demand was down in the lockdown period. Understandably so. Your industrial activity, commercial activity coming to a grinding halt would have has had the impact. Number two, we have seen distribution companies struggle to issue bills to consumers and collect them. And that's why we have seen a 90,000 crore package being unveiled and loans given to the distribution companies. So, power sector is certainly in a very not a very healthy, financially healthy state of affairs. And I think the lockdown has only helped it make it worse. So, we're just hoping that things will change once focus gets back on metering reforms and many other things that are still on the agenda.
Okay, and so one of the recent developments, especially in India, is like growing anti-China sentiments. Like there have been a boycott China movement, not by the government but by the people. So, I mean, what is your take on that, and how you going to ensure that you don't source any China products? Like you have been sourcing MG cars, so will you be going ahead with? Will you be in tandem with the emotions of the people?
Look, it's not about sentiments. It's not about emotions. Yes, in person we may have side with the emotions or not, but as a professional organization, we go by what is the law of the land, right? Now, it is not just about the two names that you've taken, whether it is MG Motors or the Chinese meter manufacturer PP Hexing. Let me tell you, even before, I mean, we have procured over 37 crore LED bulbs, right? Most people say that the LED industry is the largest in China. Not a single LED bulb is made in China product. I mean, there were very few, 1% initially. Everything has been manufactured here. And this goes on and on to virtually everything, including PP Hexing, which is the Chinese meter manufacturer, and MG Motor. So one of our key requirements for qualification in any tender is that you should have a manufacturing and a servicing facility in India. This is a requirement that has to be met by people. And it has nothing to do with the sentiments, it has nothing to do with what we are seeing now. It's a very simple professional requirement that I have. Because I'm a service company. I earn my revenue not by selling streetlights or not by selling vehicles, but by providing service. I provide lighting as a service, which means my lights have to function for the next 7 years. My vehicles have to run properly for the next 7 years. And therefore, I need someone, if there is a problem, someone should stand up and correct that problem. So this has enabled virtually all that we have bought to be manufactured in India. Yes, components do come from outside, I'm not denying that. Number two, coming to the meter manufacturer. Meter manufacturer we reneged the contract on 2 grounds. Number one, they had not yet set up manufacturing facilities which they had promised 1.5 years ago. Number two, they were till date were supposed to give us 15 lakh meters, right? And till date they have given us 9,000 meters. So they have not performed as per contract. Now coming to the third, we issued a tender for 250 vehicles, which was opened on the 14th. Again, going by the law of the land, MG Motors, I mean, they satisfy everything. They have a manufacturing facility, they have service network. But the law of the land right now says that if you have investors who have shared the border with India, they need to have security clearance from a government-appointed committee. They did not have that, so they did not become eligible.
So, if I'm not wrong, you have recently set up a charging plaza somewhere in Delhi. So, I mean, what is your objective behind it and all? I mean, is it about, addressing those range anxiety issues in the which the consumers are currently grappling with, or is it about it's an additional revenue stream for you? And if it's an additional revenue stream, how many more charging plazas do we expect in India?
Okay, number one, yes, it is there to address the range anxiety issue, and that's why it has been put together at Rafi Mark, which is a fairly visible spot right outside the Constitution Club and very near to the Rail Bhavan and the Parliament building. Number two, we also want to provide consumers the choice, the ease which exists in a petrol pump. When you go to a petrol pump, you don't have to bother whether this charging is a CCS charging, or it is a CHAdeMO charging, or it is Bharat 001. Just like you and me, if I go to a petrol pump, all I need to do is to fill in petrol or diesel. That's about it. I'm not concerned about anything else. So in this charging plaza, we have all kinds of charging infrastructure, all kinds. There are 14 cars that can be charged simultaneously in this charging plaza. And let me tell you, it's been just 1 month, or actually less, since we have inaugurated this plaza. The utilization is only about 10%, which is a very healthy sign that people are utilizing it, people are using it. Now, in terms of how many charging plazas we will do, it all depends upon how much land we are able to get. And this is a nice, good piece of land right at the roadside that we have bought. We are working on with a few municipal corporations, particularly in the Delhi NCR region. And we hope to have at least 2 or 3 more such plazas in the Delhi NCR region, which and the second thing is that obviously you will not get a large amount of space. So what we also see, where are people going to come and spend, let's say, half an hour while they are away and the car gets charged. So this is a place where there is a cluster of places where people come to. There's Ministry of Power, there's CSIR, Constitution Club, I told you, Rail Bhavan, Parliament building, all that is nearby. So we are looking at similar places. Delhi Haat could be the second plaza that we may come up with, because again for the same reason that people will go there, spend half an hour, and in that meantime their car gets charged. And it should be also in a place which is visible to others, that helps in the range anxiety issue. So we are working on these things, and you will see a few more charging plazas in Delhi NCR itself.
So now, if you could shed some light also on the collaboration with Noida Authority, a little details about it, what is going to come out of it, and the whole deals.
Yeah, so with Noida Authority, we have 2 collaborations and 2 fronts. Number one is, of course, electric mobility. So we are setting up charging stations. The total number that we'll set up is about 100. We've done about 18 to 20 chargers have already been deployed. And we are, again, as I said, we are looking at places which are highly visible, where people can see, so that's one collaboration that we are doing. I think in the next 3 to 4 months we should have 100 charging stations in Noida Authority alone. Also, we are helping them in upgrading their street light infrastructure. So the lights are being supplied by us. And of course, the installation maintenance will be done by Noida Authority. So that's the second piece of collaboration that we have with the Noida Authority.
Worldwide, there's a buzz on Tesla. Tesla disrupting the market. Being you a key stakeholder of the EV revolution, would you want Tesla to come India on an expeditious manner? If yes, do you think they should a red carpet should be laid out for them, even though they don't manufacture here? And how is the entire EV ecosystem going to benefit out of that? Your thoughts?
I mean, India is possibly will be the biggest market for EVs in the next 5 to 7 years. So it is not about you wanting Tesla, me wanting Tesla. It is Tesla wanting India. I mean, they can't choose to ignore this market for long. Let me tell you, they were in touch with us some time back. They have shown their interest of bringing their cars here. And as I said, you can't ignore Indian market, because this is the only market that will grow. I mean, look at your vehicle ownership. Vehicle ownership is less than 10%. I I mean, even if it goes 30% in the next 10 years, that's an enormous amount of increase that you will see. Particularly now in the post-corona times, where people have suddenly gone back to personal mobility, which was going away and towards. So there is no question of me or you wanting it. They are a professional company. They would like to not ignore a market like India.
Sir, now we are all going through the pandemic, and companies and OEMs are trying to run lean. And this is one point. And the second point is, sir, the consumer sentiment is also down. People don't want to put in money into big ticket purchases. So, in this scenario where the companies are running lean, consumer sentiment is down, do you think electric mobility will take a back seat for the OEMs and the consumers as well?
There's no question of backseat or anything. I mean, as long as there is demand, if there is enough demand for EVs, I'm sure OEMs will do whatever needs to be done. And I see steps by various governments, including central and the states, in this direction. I already mentioned about the EV policy of Delhi. I don't know if you've seen the EV policy of Rajasthan, which is even better. So that these are then I understand that the Ministry of Power is going to come out with a nationwide campaign promoting electric mobility. One of the reasons why people are not buying cars, of course, one is that if you see in the market, there is either you have cars which are 10 lakhs, and these are Mahindra and Tata Tiggo, or you have upwards of 25 lakh, which is Kona, NMG, and even Nissan. There's nothing in between. Tata has just come up with Nexon. We need some more choices in this range. Number two, the fact that the cost of running an EV is 1/5 or 1/6 of a petrol vehicle is also not known to public. And that is what I understand the Ministry of Power's campaign is going to bring out in so many words. So if there is enough demand generated, I'm pretty sure that EVs will not take a backseat. And the third thing which I wanted to raise through your channel is that everyone says that government has to do more, Now, if you look at electric mobility last 3 years, I think it has been only the government which has been doing it. The government of India decided that certain part of their fleet will become electric. Government of Kerala this year decided that they will also 20% of their fleet in 1 year will become electric. Government of Delhi has said 100% of their fleet in 1 year will become electric. Have you heard of any such pledge from a corporate sector? I have not. And they are very big players in the corporate sector, as large as some of the state governments. So I would want to request through your channel that all of and it helps them. It's not about the sector. All this is being done by government because the petrol bill goes down by 1/6. So I'm requesting through your channel, large corporates, come up and show some ambition. I'm not saying you change everything in one go, but maybe 10%. And if there are collective efforts all the way through, you will suddenly see an electric vehicle boom in this country.
Sir, recently there's been an Atmanirbhar program which was rolled out by the Modi government, which is basically Make in India 2.0. So what are the takeaways? And do you think the EV industry is going to be able to leverage on this? If yes, how are the components and other players going to benefit out of it? If you can shed some light on that.
So let's come straight to the EV. Now, what are the components of the EV? Components of the EV is an electric motor, a powertrain, a battery, and the transmission system. Now, transmission system is like any other car. There's no change in that. Motors have been made in this country for ages, right? As far as batteries are concerned, I know at least 4 international battery manufacturers who have already started manufacturing batteries in India. So, if you see an Atmanirbhar Bharat, possibly in EVs, it will create an ecosystem which is largely Indian, largely made in India. Then a whole lot of it is software. Whether it is the battery management system, whether it is the powertrain management system, or your interface with the payment systems, all of it are homegrown. In fact, we are using homegrown systems for managing our EV charging infrastructure. So EVs, in a large way, which can create a lot of make in India here, which will enable a lot of the players who invest in these things to actually export at a very reasonable price. Very similar to what we have seen in the LED market. Today, India produces the most efficient and durable LEDs at the lowest cost. And I know companies which have started to export to markets in the US and UK and Europe. So I don't see a reason why this would not happen again in the EV space.
How many EVs have you been able to source till date, and out of that, how many have been deployed? And also, what is your long-term target? Has there been any have you reached the target, or you have kept it up, or what is the way forward?
3 years ago, we planned to do 10,000 EVs, and we procured 10,000 EVs. We could not deploy, and I've been on record saying that if you look at from the perspective of the statistics, I don't think this will take any take. We have deployed only 1,500 vehicles, largely because there was one state which gave us an order of about 10,000 vehicles, and when the government changed, the order was released. And you can't take cars, 10,000 cars and sell it anywhere else. So that is where, so we have not kept any target after that. Our strategy has changed, that we will first aggregate demand, and only the demand that I have, I will issue a procurement. So I had demand of 250 cars. I have issued the procurement, and we will start deploying them from October onward. And as soon as we get something else, in fact, we wanted to do 750 cars more, but that were coming basically from shared mobility players. Now, in the pandemic, all of them came back and said, look, we cannot commit to taking these 750 cars because shared mobility in general has been, like any other transportation, has taken a severe beating. So as I said, now there is no target. We try and aggregate demand. As soon as we have a reasonable size number, we put out a procurement.
If I'm not wrong, there were some rumors that many customers were not satisfied with the performance of the product, so they had to return it and all. And also because of that, it has caused some sort of fear psychosis in the minds of consumers. Would you like to clarify?
Number one, not a single vehicle has been returned. Not a single. Right? There were some media reports, particularly about a year ago, that the range of the vehicle is not very good, etc., etc. I mean, that's correct, because the vehicles that we procured were the only vehicles available in the country at that point in time. Their range was 130 kilometers. Now, that 130 kilometer is on standard driving conditions. Now, if you, I'm sure you drive a car, when you buy it, it says 20 kilometer per liter and there's a star on that. You never get 20 kilometers. You get 15, 16. It's always 20% less. Same thing applies to an EV. So if it is 130 kilometers, what it will give you is about 100 kilometers, depending upon how you drive. Are you using the air conditioner? How are the traffic conditions? So there was nothing wrong in the specifications of the car to begin with. And number two, we have data of all cars. The average usage of a car that we have given is not more than 40 to 50 kilometers. So and everyone seems to be extremely satisfied with the performance because it's noiseless. It doesn't break down. Yes, the breakdown is there, but the rate is extremely low. So not a single car has come back from any customer that we have.
Sir, now e-rickshaws. E-rickshaws have shifted to e-mobility, and this has been without any push from anybody. Silently, the e-rickshaw has totally changed into electric. And even customers are very fond of the electric e-rickshaws. So, sir, do you see such trends, certain sectors, public transport catching up on electric mobility on its own?
So let's understand why this shift happened, and as you rightly said, without any government intervention. To the extent that almost 5 million e-rickshaws came up in India in the last 3-4 years, which actually makes India the largest, having the largest EV population in the world. I mean, if you include e-rickshaws. Why it happened is very simple. Economics. If you see, the battery is not part of the rickshaw. Battery is usually given as a service. So if that happens, your normal rickshaw, I mean this e-rickshaw becomes almost equal to a motorized rickshaw. I mean I'm saying they are motorized rickshaw. And with the battery as a cost of service is much lesser than petrol and diesel. And therefore the large scale shift. The Ministry of Transport has come out with this heartbreaking notification where vehicle can be registered without a battery. Right? This was not the case with 2, 3, 4 wheelers. Now it is possible. The moment you do that, your two-wheeler, for example, which today electric two-wheeler cost about 1,20,000 or 1,10,000. You take out the battery, 50,000. You give me battery as a service. It's 1/4 of what I would spend on petrol. So now, as I said, all these things have now been said. The disruption will happen much faster than any one of us could believe. Let me tell you very, very frankly.
So recently, the Delhi government came out with a EV roadmap where they rolled out multiple benefits for the consumers. And close on the heels of that, the central government said that now, if you don't buy a battery along with EV, that will still be considered as an EV. So how do you perceive these two developments on electric vehicles? Is it going to spur further sales? If yes, if you can shed some light on that.
Certainly, these are all complementary things. If you see in Delhi government's EV policy, it gives a lot of impetus on swapping of batteries. Now, with this notification of Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, you will have new class of people who will be owners of battery and giving battery as a service. So you're creating a new mechanism, a new market, and that's what the role of a government is. And you and I will possibly buy a electric two-wheeler without a battery. It spurs another set of market, of another set of players who are willing to pre-buy transportation batteries. Because for example, if I'm getting into battery storage 3 years from now, the batteries which are no longer used in transportation can be used in storage. So it's a very, very good complementary set of initiatives, both from the center and the state government. And I really welcome them to be one of the key drivers of e-mobility in this country.
Sir, are you also looking at as you said, high traffic areas for charging stations? So are you looking at also a place like a mall, multi-level parking in a mall where people are actually going to spend a lot of time? Suppose I go for a movie, so that's 2 hours to 3 hours time, and I can easily charge my car. Office complexes like DLF, Cyber Hub and everything. So all that.
Yeah, so in central Delhi, we already have nearly 500 charging points in and around the government offices. At the moment, they are for captive use of the government, but at some point in time when the mobility grows up, at least in those buildings which are not, where the security issue is not that much, we intend to open it up for public as well. Number two, yes, if you look at the worldwide trend, most of the charging stations are in parking lots, whether they are on local bodies parking lots or a cinema hall or a mall. Yes, these are the places where these are put. As you rightly said, you need at least half an hour to get your car charged. So we are the places where we have installed public charging stations are exactly those places. Markets, they are parking lots, and we are also looking at malls. We are looking at other high footfall areas, including a cluster of private or public offices.
Sir, in medium to long term, what is your key focus areas for EESL?
So, 3 things. Number 1 is EVs. We are talking about EVs. Number 2 is decentralized solar, and we will add carbon finance to this. to make it more attractive, particularly for rural areas. And the third is smart meters. So these are my the ESL's three focus areas as we look at it.
Thank you for talking to us, sir. All the best and be safe.
Thank you.